In this video, we're going to be comparing probably what is the best 3 ARs in the game right now, which is the Cold War AK, the C58 and the XM4. We're going to be going over all the stats to let you know which one is the best. If you enjoy weapon stat breakdowns and weapon comparisons, don't forget to subscribe to the channel as we're trying to reach our goal of 10,000 subscribers, and click that link in the description down below and subscribe to our second channel. We do post extra gameplay content over there as well. This video is going to have a lot of interesting stuff like basically TTKs based on your KD and also mixed shot location TTKs, which is basically what you experience in game more or less, or as close as possible to that. But before we get into all the kind of breakdown, I do want to just quickly show you the builds we were using to compare this, so if you do want the builds. So for the Cold War AK, we're using this build right here, which is the GRU suppressor, Spetsnaz RPK, axial 3x, Spetsnaz grip, 45 round mags. And we're mainly comparing these weapons for long range, of course, not really close range. Then for the C58, we have the agency suppressor, task force barrel, axial 3x, field agent foregrip, 45 round drum. And then similarly for the XM4, we've got the agency suppressor, task force barrel, axial 3x, 60 round mags, and field agent foregrip. So these are the builds we tested for all the stats in this video. So before we get into the actual values here, I do want to quickly show you some of our testing methods for this, because we actually managed to get mixed shot location TTKs based on KD. So that is very exciting stuff. So basically we could tell you, like, based on your KD on average, what kind of TTKs should you expect. Now, this is not fully accurate, and the reason for that is because I'm basing these KD values and these shot location values off myself and then off my brother as well. So if we had more people to base this off of, we'd get a better average, and that way we could get better, more accurate stats. But for now, this is the only 2 people that we could base these stats from, and hopefully it gives you some insight of how these TTKs work. And if you do want to be kind of like part of this testing, leave us a comment down below if you've got a slightly different KD to us. So I've got a 1.4 KD, my brother has a 0.88 KD. So if you have something like a 2 and maybe like a 0.4, then please leave a comment down below. But how we actually tested this is we took 10 weapons from Cold War. We got the shot location percentages. So basically how many shots do you land in that particular shot location for headshots, upper chest, stomach, limbs as well. So for myself, I managed to get an average percentage of headshots at 14.2%, 22.2%, 11.2%, and 52.4% for head, upper chest, stomach, and limbs respectively. And I'm the 1.4 KD player. So for my brother's testing, we did do, again, 10 weapons, and we done the average for each shot location. For headshots, he got an 8.55. For upper chest, he got 16.66. For stomach, he got 11.44, and limbs is 63. Now, the way we actually calculated this now is that we took the head, upper chest, and stomach shots, and we basically calculated how many shots it would take to get those particular shots to kill. And then every other shot that was left over was going to be a limb shot. And the reason for that is because more often than not, you're going to be landing limb shots, whether you're a 1.4 KD player or a 0.88 KD player, or even a 2 or a 3 KD player. You're still mainly landing limb or maybe stomach shots there. So like I said, that is where most of your shots are going to go. So that is how we calculated the shot values. So we got the shot locations then after that. So the shot locations for myself was 1 headshot for the most part, then 2 chest shots, 1 stomach shot, and then 3 limb shots, right? And that's for the Cold War AK at close range. And then we done for long range, we done for the C58, we done for the XM4. So then we done the exact same thing for my brother, and we worked out that headshots, he barely landed any across the board. Then for chest shots, he landed 1, with the exception of the XM4 at long range where he landed 2. And then again stomach shots, and then we done limb shots as well. So like I said, any remainder damage was put into the limb shots, and the reason for that is because you do mainly land more limb shots. So let's get into some actual TTKs now. So what we have is the close range damage for the Cold War AK, long range damage, close range damage for the C58 and the long range damage, close range damage for the XM4 and the long range damage. We do have neck shots in here as well, just for reference, but these were not included in the TTKs because you can't land a neck shot in Cold War multiplayer, and that is kind of how we got our percentages. So we had to use chest shots for this. We are using only chest shots in this for the testing as well. For the chest shot TTK on the Cold War AK47, at close range, at 600 milliseconds, at long range it's 700. But the C58 is standard across the board, so it's 651 and 651 because it's 7 shots to kill regardless. Then for the XM4, it's going to be 583 and 666, and that's because at close range is 8 shots to kill, at long range it's 9 shots to kill. Now we do also have DPS values here as well, so the higher the DPS value the better. So at close range for the Cold War AK it's 360, long range is 320, close range for the C58 is 340, long range is 313, XM4 is 360, then 324. So I mean, for the most part, the XM4 and the Cold War AK have very similar DPS. I mean, all these guns have very similar DPS anyway. I don't think DPS is all that important in my opinion. I think people want to know how fast they can kill an opponent, move on to the next one. So now let's move on to the most important bit here. This is the mixed shot location TTKs based off of at close range with the Cold War AK. Like I said, I was landing 1 headshot, then 2 chest shots, 1 stomach shot, and then the rest were extremities. And with that kind of shot profile, I was getting a 7-shot kill at close range, an 8-shot kill at long range, and these are the TTKs, so 600 and 700 milliseconds, which is very similar to the chest shot TTK of the Cold War AK. Then my brother was actually getting no headshots like I mentioned, but even without no headshots at close range and at long range with the Cold War AK, he was still getting that same TTK. So the Cold War AK is very forgiving if you don't land any headshots, and that's probably one of the reasons why it's such a popular gun right now, because you don't even need to be hitting good shot locations to get a good TTK, so that's why the Cold War AK feels really good. For the C58, I was getting, again, very similar shot profiles to just the regular chest shot TTK at 651. My brother at close range didn't land any headshots once again, and he was getting 651, but at long range he was then getting penalized because he wasn't hitting any headshots there. So at long range, if you don't get any headshots with the C58, you definitely do get penalized, so that's something you definitely want to consider. So he's getting a 759 TTK, which isn't terrible, but it isn't the best TTK. So for example, a 1.4 KD player using the C58 would be a 0.88 KD player at that range, because it's about 100 millisecond difference in TTK. We've got the XM4 as well. This is where we see the biggest differences actually. So for example, with my TTK values, I was getting 583 milliseconds, which is very similar to the chest shot TTK. And then also at long range, I was getting exactly the same because I was getting the same number of shots to kill. Then my brother was actually getting 1 less shot to kill than me because again, he's not landing that headshot. So at close range, he's getting 666 milliseconds. And at long range, he's getting 749 milliseconds. So again, there's about 100 milliseconds difference here. And there's about, I'd say roughly 100 milliseconds difference here. So like I said, this might not work absolutely for everyone, because not every 0.88 KD player won't be hitting headshots, but it's just a good idea to see how you're getting outgunned by enemy players if they're slightly more skilled than you, if they can control recoil a little bit better. So moving on into these handling stats, we've got the meta builds for each one of these weapons. We tested reload time, the mag size, which is not really much of a test, bullet velocity, and ADS time. So for the meta build, for the Cold War AK, we got a reload time of 1.4 seconds, C58 was 2.2, XM4 was 1.8. Both the Cold War AK and XM4 are pretty good for reloading. Then the mag size, we use the meta mags. We never really use the biggest mags because no one really uses those unless you're playing inside that new game mode. But for the mag size for the Cold War AK is 45, C58 is 45, XM4 is 60. Bullet velocity is very similar for all these weapons. I wouldn't really factor in bullet velocity when thinking about which gun to use, because you're going to hit your shots regardless with any one of these weapons. Over 1,200 is amazing bullet velocity anyway. And then ADS time, the Cold War AK was surprisingly the fastest, which is actually surprising to me. And then the XM4 and C58 have 400 milliseconds ADS. So as you can see, the Cold War AK is very competitive when it comes to reload times, ADS times, mag size. So the next thing I want to show you is actually the recoil chart of these weapons and me trying to control them. So I think that's really important to show, is me trying to control them. Now, a lot of people did complain about the angle of the way we tested this last time. Now, it's kind of hard to get the right angle on this because if I go here and try to fire it exactly straight, I don't have a line of sight on the wall. So you're just going to have to go with this. I know it's not 100% accurate, but it's probably the closest we're going to get when it comes to recoil values and just kind of seeing what the recoil is like. And I do want to test this at a kind of long distance at 30 meters because most of your AR gunfights will be within this range right here. So for the Cold War AK, let's see what the way it looks when you fire this weapon. So as you can see, it's gone straight off the wall right there. And we'll do it one more time, just firing the weapon straight away. So as you can see, it kind of goes upwards and to the right. So trying to kind of correct for this a little bit, we'll fire it straight in the middle here and try and control the recoil. And keep in mind, like I said, I'm a 1.4 KD player, and this is me trying to control the recoil for the first time, just on a wall with the Cold War AK. And as you can see, it's still relatively accurate. I mean, it's not the most accurate gun, of course, and nowhere near as accurate as something like the old Krig, but definitely something you can manage. And as you can see, the recoil does go up, and I think the main issue is the spacing between the shots. That's something you need to get used to. But now let's try the C58 and do the exact same thing. So we'll go at 30 meters. Like I said, this is a slight angle this time, but regardless, we're going to need to bear with it. And again, it goes fires up, and it's slightly to the left this time when it comes to the C58, so that goes up and to the left a little bit. So as you can see, up and to the left. And there's not as much spacing between these shots as there is with the Cold War AK, but there's still enough spacing there to notice it. And like I said, it goes up and curves a little bit to the left there. So we'll go back at this 30 meter distance, and we'll try and control that recoil. And again, as you can see, I struggled a little bit there because at the end, it did kind of go off up there, but for the most part, I was clustered down here. So again, we're doing this test again with the XM4, and we're going to do just firing the weapon and see what it looks like. So already I can notice that there's much less recoil with this weapon compared to the other two. So let's just fire this again. Now, at the start, you can see it travels a little bit quicker, and then once you get to those kind of higher up parts, the spacing is a lot less. So let's try and control this recoil now. So as you can see, it jumped up really quick, and then after that it kind of stops and becomes really easy to control. We'll try that one more time. So as you can see, it starts off, travels up really quick, and then it stops and goes really slow. So as you can see, it's still a pretty hard gun to control because it travels up really fast initially. And all these guns are not like super easy to control like the Krig was before. But like I said, the XM4 is, after you fire a couple of shots, probably the easiest one to control after that. So like I said, you'll probably get slightly more better recoil plots if you practice a little bit with each of these weapons. I mainly use the Cold War AK, so I know how to control the recoil of that weapon probably the best. I don't really use the C58, and I don't really use the XM4 unless it's for close range. So like I said, if you practice a bit more with these guns, you will obviously get better recoil control. But this is just to give you an idea of what the guns feel like when you're firing them. Overall, in my opinion, if I was to pick one of these weapons, I'd pick the Cold War AK, and that is because even if you do miss some of your shots, you're still going to get that reliable TTK. It kills super quick, it works well as a sniper support and a long range weapon in my opinion. The recoil is not crazy to manage, it is manageable, but if you're trying to look for the kind of lower recoil option, I would definitely go for the XM4. I do think you will manage to hit more shots with that gun. Even if you use the Cold War AK, you're struggling to hit your shots, just try moving over to the XM4, because even if you don't hit any headshots, you're still going to get a very similar TTK than what you would get with the Cold War AK anyway. So just because it's a harder hitting gun doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to do better with that weapon. You could be doing just as good or better with the XM4. Now, what I do want to mention is that with the XM4, if you do land at least one headshot, then you are going to get significantly better TTKs than what you would get with the C58 or the Cold War AK, especially at those longer ranges. It's very important that you notice that. But if you don't hit any headshots, then you're probably better off with one of the other two weapons. But if I was to pick one, I would definitely go for the Cold War AK. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, don't forget to subscribe to the channel as we're trying to reach our goal of 10,000 subscribers. And click that link in the description down below and subscribe to our second channel. We do post extra content over there as well. And thank you very much for watching.